So just hours before Google officially unveiled the Googlebook, there was a little leak of a full Aluminium OS build, aka the software running on the first Android-powered laptops. There's a lot to discuss here, so let's get into it. You know the score by now though, I will not stop asking until you join the crew. You're top of my list, you're top of my hit list, so join the team by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to have you. Cheers. So as I say, just hours before the Android show when we had our first official rundown of some of the new features coming to a Googlebook, a leak courtesy of Mystic Leaks shows what is essentially the backbone for the first wave of Android-powered laptops, which we must preface have not yet been announced, nor have any OEM stepped up to confirm specifications, hardware, and all that important stuff. All we know is that Googlebook is working with partners, or Google, is working with partners to bring the Googlebook to the masses later this year. That said, this is not exactly a great look, is it? But a 17-ish minute, around about 16, 17 minutes run through of what is Aluminium OS at its core, at least gives us an idea or a taste of what will be built on or what will be built upon in the coming months ahead of the hardware launches later this year from those selected partners. We get to see things like the home screen, how this desktop differs from Chrome OS and what similarities there are there, how desktop folders are handled, changes to things like the quick settings panel and the notification shade, made specifically for this form factor. We also get a glimpse of how the Link to iOS app might work, which apparently will let you pair with an iPhone. I guess similarly to how Link to Windows works with Android phones and Windows devices. For all intents and purposes though, this looks and feels very much like the vanilla Android we all know and love, that experience that you've probably tried at least once, in that basically nothing has been altered too drastically. In fact, I will say it's almost identical at first glance to the desktop mode that is already available on Pixel phones, or at least started rolling out I think with a previous update, I think maybe about the April time. I do feel like that is not going to set pulses racing, at least at this stage, but we do know that this is at least an Android 17 build. It has the May 2026 security patch pre-installed, so there really isn't much of an excuse for some of the functionality missing, at least at this point, especially as Google's just announced this. But I will say there is probably enough time for Google to put the pedal to the metal and start building out some of the functionality that a lot of you and a lot of people desire in a desktop operating system of any great caliber. But I'm wondering just how they're going to do that and how we see these changes start to come to the fore in the coming months. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and walk through some of the highlights in this leak. I think what struck me right away was that the startup screen appeared to use the old Android logo identification or ident. Maybe that's a conscious decision. I do wonder if that is related to how some of these OEMs might be able to make their own changes. I did think that Google changed that a while back to be something more modern and using a different font or a different typeface, so it seems a little bit strange and out of place here. I also know that it is running in a virtual machine in this leak, but the boot time was especially long. I do wonder if this is just a first boot, and because it's running in a virtual machine, that is something that may have caused that. I really do hope that this isn't a common issue when we start to get the real hardware though close to launch, as slow boot up times might be something that is really hard to kind of hide behind, and people might get quite frustrated with that when they first power these on, when they get their hands on Android laptops. I will say the initial setup screen is very somewhat familiar to a lot of people out there, but it lets you do things like put a work or personal account in right from the get-go. That isn't present on a lot of Android phones. So Google obviously clearly thinks that Googlebooks will be used in enterprise settings if it is offering this right from the start screen. I think once you make that choice, it's that regular setup procedure that you'll see on a Pixel or basically any other Android phone nowadays, with the ability to restore or set up using another device. I will say I'm kind of unsure how this will play out. At least to me, a laptop is a secondary device or piece of hardware. It's a dedicated piece of hardware. I don't want my phone to be transferred over unless it means maybe faster logins to applications I use day to day. But then again, Android doesn't have all the apps that I need to use on a work day. And so it feels a little bit redundant, at least in my case. It might be to many people, but some of you might really like that option, as you'll be able to log into those applications and have no issues right from the very start point. As I noted a moment ago, the home screen is practically identical to the Pixel desktop mode. You have your app drawer icon, some Google applications pre-pinned to the taskbar, the battery and signal indicators in the top right, like on a phone or a tablet, which I kind of hoped would actually emulate how it works on Chrome OS in the bottom right, something that we're used to on desktop OSs, but it is what it is. It does feel very, very Windows 11 to me, at least at first glance, and I think Chrome OS kind of feels like that as well. Maybe Chrome OS has influenced Windows 11 and Windows 11's, I don't know. You kind of get what I'm getting at. The pre-installed suite of applications, though, includes a number of test applications here. There's a new dedicated task manager application. I'm glad to see something like that available here on a desktop operating system. Maybe you can monitor your system usage and all that kind of stuff. although we don't get to see that running. The rest of the applications here are usual who's who of first-party Google Android applications here in this desktop form factor. There does, though, look to be some changes that we get to see, such as custom corner shortcuts for launching into various UI portions. Think the Recents app menu, notifications, quick settings, even just going to your lock screen, all that kind of thing. Nothing too groundbreaking, but I do like that there is a I guess a gesture for this, even though you're going to be having to use probably a cursor to make this work. Just circling back to the link to iOS application, this is going to let you scan a QR code to connect your phone. I'm guessing there's no application for this just yet. There's nothing on the Play Store as of note. And if you scan that QR code, which I don't advise you to do, it doesn't actually send you anywhere. It just sends you to a support page for generic Android stuff. But when you see this app running, it only offers a keep up with your text messages signpost. So maybe from what we can tell, it's just going to be a way to send and receive text in Aluminium OS, just like the Google Messages application on Windows and Mac. That's just a web wrapper. It kind of works a lot like WhatsApp Web. So I'm wondering if that's going to work that way with iPhones. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. Folders on your home screen will work a little bit differently here than on the phone-based Android that you're used to. It looks like you can still create app folders, but it looks like you'll also be able to add document folders here as well. I wonder if you can put individual documents, but there's no sign of that yet. I think for productivity, that's going to be ultra important because you don't have to launch an application to find those important files or docs. I'm also wondering how Aluminium OS will handle these file types and various applications on your phone. I'm guessing at this stage, just like your phone will do, it'll offer you a dialog box for any apps that you have installed that support said file to open it and run it. Mystic Leech doesn't actually show this in this run through. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how this is going to work when we get to see this in full flow in the coming months. What's really striking to me is that the customization options don't seem all that in-depth, given this is a desktop OS. Just the same wallpaper and style controls that we currently have on Pixel, and that's really, really bare bones out of the box. I kind of figured there would be more options for moving around the taskbar, maybe the notification shade and quick settings. As it stands, it doesn't feel all that great in that respect. At least the quick settings can be resized, but we don't get to see that in practice. And when you start to add tiles, they're identical to they are on Pixel. I feel this probably could have been flat out copied with just how it works on Chrome OS, have that same taskbar option there and the little quick settings. I think if someone were to jump over from Chrome OS, this might feel familiar, but not exactly all that comfortable right from the get-go. There are definitely some things that I do think Android doesn't do well enough, although the video doesn't really show it a great deal. It probably highlights some of the shortcomings right now with this version of Aluminium OS, and hopefully we get to see some changes as this starts to progress. Maybe we'll get to see some more when Google starts to reveal this more publicly. What's also really interesting about this leak is that it was actually running on an M4 MacBook Pro using the UTM emulator. So how that affected or didn't affect performance remains to be seen. But in some cases, it seemed to run a little bit slower than I would have expected given the performance overhead. But again, VMs aren't always the best in terms of gauging performance of a piece of software just like this. And considering it was a 16-minute video, I will say we didn't see all that much in the grand scheme of things. No magic cursor, no Gemini intelligence functions that were announced just a day ago or a couple of days ago, just a bare bones desktop and really little else of note. This could, though, be a build for OEM partners. I'm actually wondering if Dell, HP and the rest of them out there will be able to make their own tweaks and alterations on Googlebook hardware and software before they start to come to market. I'm actually still concerned about that. Kind of feels like these early days or those early days where manufacturers can make changes and alterations that inhibit the experience. And I can imagine a Dell Googlebook, which is a terrible name, by the way, would come with a ton of bloat pre-installed. And that might not be a good look for everyone out there. Could imagine full screen ads that you have to deal with every 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, that wouldn't be a good look for anyone. I'm actually hoping that I.O. or at I.O. will get a little bit more information and details, as I think while this is an interesting little leak, it is just after all a snippet. I can't lie though, this first look has given me a little bit of pause for thought, as I think Samsung DeX already looks and functions a bit better than this, but I guess we will have to wait and see in a few months just how ready or close to ready Android is for desktop usage day to day. Let me know though what you think down in the comment sections below. Are you ready to use an Android powered laptop or Android on a laptop form factor? And what else do we need to see before launch before it becomes viable for you? I'm actually being really cautious with my thoughts here because I will save judgment for later in the year when we get to see these in person for the first time. Cheers for watching though. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And as always, I'll speak to you later.